everyone. Welcome to today's webinar featuring Chilean-focused explorer Freehill Mining, ASX code FHS. My name is Alex Paul. I'm from InvestorStream, and I'm going to be your host this morning. Now, for those unaware, earlier this week, Freehill updated the JORC-compliant mineral resource estimate for the company's 100% owned Yerbas Buenas magnetite project in Chile. Our speaker today is Freehill Mining CEO Peter Hinner, who will give us a short presentation. There will be a Q&A section following the presentation, so please feel free to send in your questions via the chat platform in the question pane in the GoToWebinar control panel, or simply email them into me at alex@investorstream.com.au. We'll address the questions at the end of the presentation, and we'll attempt to get through as many as time permits. A copy of the webinar will also be available on Freehill's website and social media channels later today. Finally, you can also download a copy of the presentation by navigating to the handouts pane in the control panel. For now, I'd like to throw it over to Peter, who's going to commence proceedings. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for the introduction, and welcome to all the investors that have registered and listening in. I'll just go through this presentation, then as Alex said, we'll have some questions following this. I'll just point out the important information page to everyone. This particular slide, we presented this before. There's a few small changes, but I think it's just worth mentioning or pointing out some of the significant issues in it. Points out that we've delivered 2 mineral resources, and there's still another 5 targets to go, but we've delivered those 2 resources essentially in 18 months. So once we made the decision to start exploring and drilling, following 18 months, we've come up with a maiden and then followed up with another drilling program on the Yerbas Buenas 6 tenement. The project will be a low operating cost, low capital cost project, and it's low by comparison to some of the larger magnetite projects in Australia, the sort of billion dollar range. There is a cost to the lower capital, and that is that it will be a much smaller operation, but also they can be moved into production much more quickly. The intent is to produce what we call a sinter feed. So there's essentially what looks like an aggregate crushing plant with magnetic separation at the end, and crush it down to a fine enough product to sell either within Chile or overseas. The other important aspect to recognise is that it's a scalable operation, so we can have essentially 2 identical parallel running crushing plants and magnet plants. So that can be brought on in phases depending on access to capital. The other important feature which we've pointed out is that we have had an existing relationship with Chile's largest iron ore producer by the supply of pellet feed or material into their pellet feed plant. And we've had those under formal offtake agreements. This diagram is probably, or image is probably the best one to show you where the deposit sits. Within the larger dotted area, you can see the drill lines zigzagging back and forth. They're just simply roads that connect our drill platforms. And the smaller square up the top is the Yerbas Buenas 1, which was our maiden resource. A couple of other features to point out in this, we have another potential magnetic target there sitting underneath that intrusive. We have another large one up there, which is the Yerbas Buenas 7 target, and we have a number of targets just sitting down in this area here. So all within a very relatively small area and accessible. And sitting up here in the top right-hand corner is where the Pan American Highway goes past. There's a public road that runs right past our front gate there and heads off in that direction to a place called Chungungu, where there is an approved mine called Cruz Grande, which is going to be built by CMP, Chile's largest iron ore producer. So at some time in the near future. I'll just move on to the next slide. Sorry. Nope. I'm going to have difficulty with that. I think we're stuck. Alex, you may need some intervention in this.
No worries, Peter. Sorry about this, guys. Just one moment.
There it goes.
We're good.
Yep. No, it's come good. Thanks. Look, objectives for our project, certainly over the next 12 to 18 months. We're going to be focusing entirely on getting a mine up and running, or certainly getting to a point where we can present a financial investment, or get to a point of a financial investment decision for the board and investors as to where we go once we've proven that this thing is a goer. There's also a critical step in all of this, and that's the metallurgical test work. Develop a flow sheet. From that flow sheet, we can then go out and start doing the costing for the feasibility study. During that time, what we're going to try and do is very, very on in the process, and this is probably over the next month or so, we're going to start working on what's called a DIA, which is essentially the Chilean environmental impact statement. That will take about 3 months, is submitted into the government, and then there is a 12-month process where it sits within government, circulates through various departments, and then they, if they're happy with that, they'll actually provide us with a mining license. So that ticks that box. The feasibility study will be run in parallel with the environmental study, because one requires information from the other. So hopefully by the end of the year we'll have an economic model, and that'll give us a lot more certainty about where the project's going. But at this stage, I don't see any showstoppers. So this thing will go to a mining operation as far as I'm concerned. We'll also use the time over the next several months to verify sales solutions. And lastly, once we confirm acquisition of the El Dorado tenements to our north, we will begin doing some exploration on that. That won't overshadow what we're doing with the development of the mine or the feasibility study, but we will do that work in the background. On top of that, because of our success in our area over the last 12 to 18 months, local people have seen that we have delivered on what we've promised, and we are presented projects all the time now, so we review those as necessary. This slide forms the basis for this particular webinar, and as everyone recognises, we released a JORC Mineral Resource Estimate yesterday. So this table here shows what that is. We've gone from 18 million tonnes in our maiden resource estimate. We've just added 49 million tonnes, taking us up to about 67, 68 million tonnes in total. And that is derived from 2 of the 7 magnetite targets that we've identified since the project started. Grade has increased quite a bit since our maiden target, and for those of you that sort of have an understanding of geological modelling, we've done this on the basis of a 10% cut-off grade. So there's the capacity to actually increase the grade if we increase cut-off grade. So the one for Yerbas Buenas 6, which is 20.6% Fe, also has a very high mass recovery. It means the amount of magnetite that you can extract out of that material, which is also much better than the Yerbas Buenas 1 project, or the Yerbas Buenas 1 resource, sorry. On the right-hand side, you should see a rotating model. Just gives you a bit of an idea of where it sits in the terrain, and just the sort of dimensions and shape of that model. Additional resources, as I pointed out earlier on, there were 7 identified magnetite structures or magnetic structures from geophysics, and we've drilled the southernmost 2. That's shown here on the map on the right-hand side that shows the drill hole locations. Lower structure there shows yellow dots with a blue line coming out. That represents the angle of drilling, which was 60 degrees, which is typical for magnetite structures in that part of Chile. Both areas will be relatively easy to develop. They're on, again, relatively flat ground, no obstructions, there's nothing else there. And it shows the other envelopes for the other structures. Important to note that we've met or exceeded the tonnes that were shown in the conceptual exploration target, which I think that was a document or a press release back in 2018, I think. So it's available on the website. There's a table that shows the exploration target. and it lists each of the structures by number. So YB1 to YB7. YB7 is shown as in this particular image, and you can see how it's just on the slope of the mountains that start on the northern fringe of our project area, so again quite accessible. This is the geophysics image which we presented in the past, and I've just summarised the size of the resources and where they are, and some of the other resources that we will explore, but certainly not. There's no intention at the moment to expend funds on those particular resources at the moment. The focus is entirely on developing what we've got so that we can get through a feasibility study and then, as I said, demonstrate viability. The last slide, or this second last slide, shows the transport solutions that we have for our project. And I have said this a number of times in the past, I'll repeat it again. The project is incredibly well situated in terms of infrastructure. There are not many mining projects that are fortunate enough to be in this type of situation, and what it does is it removes a lot of the risk out of development. So we have a number of ports available to us. They're shown on the slide in terms of distance. We have great roads. We've got 2 high voltage power lines beside the mine site, and we don't see any issues with sales or transport solutions. And over the next several months, we'll just zero in on what we believe is probably the best one that gives best bang for buck in terms of revenues for the project, and that can change depending on what the iron ore price is. I think in the last few days it's gone up to $100. So yeah, it's quite a healthy iron ore price. Last slide simply shows a project to our north. It's quite a large number of large mining cities, Copiapó and Viana to our north. They're about 3 hours drive by highway, and a lot of mining activity up there in terms of both magnetite mines and copper mines. And this just shows one that was built several years ago. So our development model will be very, very similar to this, scalable, very simple technology, with the aim of producing 1 million tonnes per annum of sinter feed from phase 1 and ramping up to possibly 2 million tonnes by putting in a second line of processing, or if the economic model suggests, then one larger plant to produce the 2 million tonnes per annum. But again, looking at a feasibility study. Hope that has sort of answered some additional questions from people, and I'll hand it back over to you, Alex. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. You're right. We have had a few questions that have come through. So look, the first one that's come through, it just talks about you referenced the Freehill being able to produce a high quality pellet feed of 67-69% iron. Is this in line with what your potential customers are expecting?
The numbers that we present there are commonly used by magnetite projects, and what they do is I suppose the easiest way is they present the potential to produce that. So if you were to produce a pellet feed, which requires significant grinding, a wet process, everything else, that's the type of product that you could produce. So what it does is it allows us to compare our project to other projects, because as I said, it's sort of a benchmark. It doesn't necessarily mean that we'll produce that. As I said, we at this stage, our model is producing what's called a sinter feed. So you dry crush it down to whatever size is required to produce a 62 or a 65% Fe. And the 62%, 65 Fe, they're benchmark grades shown by Platts. So you can find the sales price for that type of concentrate on the web quite easily. But our intention is to keep our process as simple as possible and do no wet grinding or so forth. It just makes our environmental approvals easier, simpler, quicker. But you know, we're confident that our metallurgical test work will show that we can get away with a sinter feed. So maybe crushing it down to anything from 6 millimetre down to maybe 2 or 3 millimetre, but doing it dry.
Peter, Freehill has previously published a universal exploration target for all of your 7 tenements identified across Yerbas Buenas. Is that target still relevant? And what's the size of the target again?
So the conceptual exploration target, it has to be interpreted in a certain way. So in that table that's presented on our website, which was the basis for the conceptual exploration target press release and report, there's a column that says total tonnes. So that's a theoretical, idealised total tonnes, and then what happens is the resource geologists discount that based on the amount of exploration that's occurred. So because when that was produced, we'd only done geophysics, and one of the targets, which was YB1, had a couple of drill holes in it. He applies a sort of a discount factor to that. So for Yerbas Buenas 1, we actually managed to get the undiscounted tonnes, which I think in the conceptual model shows 20 million tonnes, and we got 18 million when we actually did the drilling program. So for Yerbas Buenas 6, I think the conceptual exploration target shows 33 million. I think we've come out with 49 million. So we're confident that we're able to, predict reasonably well what sort of tonnes we would get out of those geophysics targets.
A similar question, Peter. How do actual resources now defined in Yerbas Buenas 1 and Yerbas Buenas 6 compared to the original exploration targets?
Well, basically the same answer. So the exploration target looks at the footprint of the geophysics that we had. So each of those geophysics, the red footprints, and then you assign an assumed depth to it and calculate tonnes, and then you discount those tonnes based on any other exploration or drilling that you've done, and they're quite heavily discounted if it's only geophysics that you're basing it on. So again, we've come up with the undiscounted tonnes for each of the targets that we've drilled. So yeah, all looking good at this stage.
How is the copper and gold mineralization in YB6 compared to what you expected prior to the JORC?
Did you say copper and gold?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Now, look, we haven't spent much time looking at the copper and gold in the YB6 structure. As I said, we've been focusing on the magnetite portion of it. This portion, or the southern end of our total project area, doesn't show large potential for copper and gold. It does exist. We've seen some drill samples with a little bit in it, but it's a little bit sporadic at this stage, and we just need to examine all the drilling results a lot more carefully over the next few months. But at the moment, our focus was on just getting the magnetite resource declared and published. So, but we always keep an eye out for copper and gold mineralization, and a little bit of that in the northern end of the project area where the mountains start.
Peter, do you see COVID-19 causing delays or problems with operations in 2020, or has that been your experience thus far this year, and do you expect that to continue?
The only effect it had on us was right at the very end of our drilling program. Drilling had actually finished, and we were just doing all the ore preparation in the lab in Chile, and it slowed down. This is when the lockdowns first started, and slowed down release of the samples from that lab and the courier process to Perth, where we completed the assaying. So it slowed that down right towards the end, hence the delay on us releasing the block model or the JORC resource. They are in a similar state to Australia. I talk with our geologists and other people on site all the time, every day, couple of days. They're in a lockdown situation. I don't think it's going to slow us down at all, because a lot of the work that we need to do is simply office work. But I do need to get across to Chile just to set a few things up for the feasibility study. But again, it's not going to affect us significantly, because everything's a lot more possible nowadays with computers and communications.
So I heard you briefly mention the feasibility study there. What's your likely time frame for it?
I would hope to have the pre-feasibility study done by the end of the year. The pre-feasibility study, just so everyone's clear on this point, there are certain tasks that determine the speed at which we can do the development. The pre-feasibility study is entirely within our control, but there there's data from the pre-feasibility study that has to go into what they call the DIA, which is the environmental impact statement. That environmental impact statement, the work takes about 3 months, which we will commence immediately now. But after that 3 months, it then goes into government for approval. And the reason it goes into government or the Mines Department for approval is that they grant a mining license. And that's what our objective is, to get a mining license for this project as soon as possible. There's nothing we can do to speed up that process once the DIA submission goes into the government. However, I've been told in the last couple of weeks that the government very recently has started looking seriously at streamlining that process, because they expect a lot of activity in mining following the opening up of, or whatever you call it, the completion of the lockdowns, etc. So the government's actually looking at speeding up that 12-month process. So that essentially, that 12-month process means that you could not start mining until you have that mining license in your hand. And again, we don't see any obstacles in getting that done. It's just a time frame that 12-month government reviews out of our hands.
So Peter, how does the tonnage in the ground convert to sellable ore? And do you have a rough figure on cost per tonne?
Well, the tonnage in the ground, I don't quite understand the question. We have total tonnes that we've actually now declared through the JORC resource. It's for the YB6 structure. We've got an inferred because it was a much larger area. So for YB1, we drilled 20 odd holes in that area, and I think it was 4 or 5 hectares. In YB6, we drilled 20 odd holes, but it was something like 20 hectares. So significantly larger area, same number of drill holes, therefore a wider spacing, and we didn't manage to get the indicated. But having said all that, in terms of the tonnes that you actually need for a mining operation, look, we'll be able to be a lot more confident about that once we do the feasibility study. But not all of those tonnes convert to to mineable material. So there's waste bands within the structure. There's other low-grade stuff that you put aside. You don't throw it away. You put it aside until the iron ore price goes shooting up, and then you feed it back through your plant. So again, a lot of this will come out of the feasibility study. I'm not quite sure whether I've actually answered all of that question, Alex, if there's a bit that I've missed out.
I'm sure if you haven't answered it, you'll hear about it, Peter.
Okay, thanks.
The next question is just about, you mentioned the tonnage there. I don't know how much you can actually expand on this, but what kind of time frame do you have until Freehill's able to increase yearly sales to 1 million tonnes per year? Is there any time frame around that? Can you help us out there?
Yeah, okay, so this is probably a question about how long to production, I assume. Look, just to add something to the previous question, look, just as a rule of thumb, probably we would use about 3.5 million tonnes of ore to produce 1 million tonnes of concentrate. So you can work out the figures yourself from the resource estimates that have been done. It's sort of in the order of 3.5 million tonnes per annum to produce 1 million tonnes per annum of magnetite concentrate. So to this particular question, how long? Look, probably, as I said, 3 months to do the environmental impact report. By the end of the year, the pre-feasibility study, which will indicate economic viability of the project, which I'm quite confident about. But then you have the 12-month wait for approval of the mining license. If it all looks good whilst it's in government, there's not too many hurdles or questions from government, I think at that stage we would be already preparing for construction. So it would be looking for funding to build the plant. We would be doing all the detailed design work for the plant, and we would be ready to push a button as soon as we get the mining license from the government. And then construction of the plant would take 6 months after that, inside 6 months, and you could be up and running.
Peter, just in terms of construction. We've had a couple of questions come through on construction. The first one is, can we start building infrastructure while waiting for a mining license? And have you engaged in any discussion with larger investors in order to fund the construction of a crushing plant?
It'd be very risky to start putting infrastructure in, and I suspect there's well, you could probably legally you could probably do it, but as I said, it's just always a risk. Because if something happens in the world between when we make our submission for a mining license and getting that approval back or something, you've already spent money, you've spent shareholders' money putting infrastructure down. I mean, there'd be certain things like road improvements, whatever. Sorry, what was the second part of the question, Alex?
And have you engaged any discussions with larger investors to fund the construction of a crushing plant?
No, not specifically. Well, not specifically yet. We've had some discussions and interest from offtake partners. As I said, our first port of call would obviously be the closest purchaser of our concentrates, which would be CAP just down the road. But if the pricing for that isn't suitable for us, then we look to export. In terms of funding partners, look, Chile is very, very pro-mining. Our area in particular is pro-mining, and the Chileans understand magnetite iron ore mining, and I'm pretty certain that we could find funding within Chile itself if we needed to. And the amount of money that we're talking about, capital expenditure, $30 million or so in that sort of order. So yeah, we're not looking for $500 million. So I don't see a problem in raising that sort of capital.
On slide 9, Peter, you referenced the Romeral pellet feed plant. Are they the likely customer, and is there an established relationship there?
Yeah, we were supplying concentrates to them for probably prior to listing, the company was mining iron sands and supplying iron sands concentrate, to Romeral, to that same plant. And as I may have mentioned in the past, they absolutely love the quality of it. And then once we listed and we moved across to mining hard rock magnetite ore with the trial mining and demonstration plant, again, we were supplying to Romeral. And they take our concentrates and they grind it down to pellet feed. So it's actually ground down to a very fine, almost icing sugar size, and then they export that or sell it, which is why those pellet feed assays are so important. As I said, they illustrate the good quality of it. So yeah, we've had formal offtake agreements, sales agreements with CAP for 4 years, total of 4 years, I think, 3 to 4 years.
Thanks, Peter. Look, this is the final one, so this is probably your last chance. Anyone, if you have any additional questions, now's the time to send them through. And this is a bit of a broader one for you, Peter. With the current trade issues with China, do you think there will be Australian miners looking for international locations to bypass any future trade restrictions?
I'm not. Could you just repeat the question, please, Alex?
Sure. So with the current trade issues with China, do you think that there will be any Australian miners looking outwards for other international locations to bypass any future trade restrictions between Australia and China?
Look, I mean, I have my personal views about lessening our reliance on China, but I think there's a great deal of interest, growing in Chile. I mean, not only for its, for iron ore magnetite, but I mean, Chile has vast resources of both copper and gold as well, and that's one of the purposes of us acquiring new properties such as El Dorado, because it gives us a broader base. So as I said, the focus was on developing the magnetite, but whilst we do that, it's just quietly in the background, just look at the copper and gold. And as I said before as well, now that we've proven to the people in our area, the government, mines department, etc., we have a lot of people coming to us, presenting projects to us. So yeah, I mean, gold and copper can be sold relatively easily around the world. And iron ore, as I said, I mean, we can sell it to local buyers if we want. Hope that answers that one.
Thanks, Peter. Well, look, unless there's no more questions, so look, that's all we have time for today. Thank you all for joining me, and I'd also like to thank Peter for his presentation and for taking the time to answer some questions. So, Peter, thanks very much for giving up your time as well.
Yep. Look, thanks for the opportunity, Alex. Look, I hope I've answered as many of those questions properly as I could, and yeah, more good things to come.
Thanks, Peter. Now, as I mentioned before, the recording of the webinar will be on the Freehill website later today, as well as all the social media platforms. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to send them through to myself, alex@investorstream.com.au, and I can forward them through to Peter, and he might be able to liaise with you independently. But just want to say thanks, everyone. We've had a great turnout this morning, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now.